Well, hello everyone, and welcome to yet another convention Facebook party. My name is Hannah Underhill. I am a longtime convention kid, really. I grew up going to convention. I am now graduated and living and doing a lot of other things, but I have been involved with convention for many, many years, and I am so excited to be able to join with you guys tonight and share in this Facebook party promoting convention, sharing some of our wonderful speakers, some of the wonderful topics that we will be sharing with you in the very, very near future, because convention it's just about a month away. That is crazy to me. June 9th, 10th through 11th. We are coming up. It feels like it is just coming around the corner very, very quickly. And we are excited to see all of you in less than a month. It's coming up. So if you're not registered, that's my first plug that I wanted to make sure that we highlighted tonight. If you are not registered for convention, it is not too late. Just go to heav.org and you will be able to find a link to registration and be prepared to take advantage of all that convention is offering this year. We're so excited that convention is back. It's so wonderful to be back in person with you, to enjoy the fellowship, the community. I was chatting with some of our ladies before we went live tonight about the community that we all enjoy from convention, as well as just the experts and the wealth of knowledge that we will be bringing to you with our workshops, with our exhibit hall, with the used curriculum sale. This is just going to be an exciting event. So I am excited to welcome all of you this evening as we prepare for that. We have some wonderful guests lined up. I had the opportunity to chat with them prior to our event tonight, and oh my goodness, they have so much wisdom. They have such heart for what they're going to be talking about. I was very, very impressed and encouraged by that as well. But before we get there, if you are joining us live, first of all, say hello in the comments, and then answer this icebreaker question for us. What is your most difficult subject to teach your child? I know for my mom, as she was homeschooling me, it was definitely math. Mom, if you're watching this, you know what it was like. So for the other parents out there that are homeschooling, and I asked that question, and as soon as I asked that question, you thought of the subject that you dread bringing up in the homeschool classroom. Maybe it's math, maybe it's English, maybe it's science. What is challenging for your child? Share that in the comments, start chatting with each other, get connected to other homeschooling parents. Additionally, we have some giveaways tonight. And the way you can enter those giveaways is very, very simple. And part of that is simply going to be what I just asked you to do in the icebreaker question. Comment on our post, share this video, tag some friends. If you have some friends that maybe don't know about HEAV or haven't heard about the convention, or you've been bugging them for a while to register, tag them now. Let them know that this video event, this Facebook party is happening tonight. They can get involved. They can get a behind the scenes peek at what we are doing at convention this year and some of the incredible speakers that we will have. So tag at least 2 of your friends, if not more. Bring everybody into the party. But also, in order to get a giveaway, we have some incredible giveaways this evening. Make sure that you either comment or share or do both, because if you do both, 2 entries tonight. So we are very, very excited to offer those to you this evening and to give you guys a chance to share this with your friends. We're really, really excited about that. I do want to highlight, before we go a little bit further in the evening, some of you may be aware of the music competition that is coming up at convention. We love to highlight our students with unique abilities, and especially music abilities. We have an annual music competition that we host. And so the competition deadline to sign up your child is this Friday. Again, you can go to our website to learn more about it. They will be encouraged to participate in a competition that has an encouraging uplifting atmosphere that allows them to celebrate their God-given gifts and talents in a way that we want to applaud and showcase. So again, go to our website, heav.org, if you have questions or would like to register your child for our music competition. So I hope that you guys are continuing to comment and share and interact in those comments. I am very interested. I truly am very interested to hear what the most difficult subject is to teach your child. I'm sure there are a lot of math answers in there because that was my weak point. And I feel for those students. I really do. If you're a student watching this and math is your difficult question. Oh, Katie, language arts. She says it's because it's so all encompassing and I have lots of children. I can see why that would be challenging, Katie. Well, hopefully we're going to have some tips and tricks for you in tonight's video with some of our guests. So continue to comment, continue to share. I do want to highlight one of our sponsors tonight, which ties into one of our guests. We are really excited to partner with LearningRx. They are sponsoring not only part of tonight's event by sharing one of their guest speakers with us this evening, but we have partnered with them for convention for a significant number of time, and we're just very grateful to have them with us and sponsoring us for convention. And as a side note, all about convention, check out the convention app. We have an app at Google Play or on the App Store. You can get the whole convention at your fingertips. It's very, very convenient. You can check out the comments for a link or go to heav.org/convention-app to learn more. I know it's super handy when I am running around the convention center and I need to have something accessible. To have it on my phone makes it very, very accessible, convenient. You can get the schedule, you can learn more information about our speakers, just very convenient information to have as you're running around looking for your workshop or trying to find the exhibit hall. And as a side note, before we get further into this evening, do remember pre-registration for convention ends May 20th. So register now before prices go up because the price will increase at the door. So it's an easy way to save money. If you already know that you're going to be coming to convention, you've already blocked that date off in your calendar, you've already talked to some of your other homeschooling parent friends, you know that that's already on your agenda, then go ahead and register now, save some money, and be prepared for the weekend to come. You could even start planning out your itinerary. So don't forget about that by any means. So now that people started to gather and come into the party, I'd love to welcome everybody who's here. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're talking about a very important subject in the area of learning disabilities. And that is something that has become more prevalent in recent years. We've talked in the background before this night's event just a little bit about some of the background of it and the context for learning disabilities. I have some very sweet friends who are homeschooling for the first time and working through what it looks like to homeschool a child with learning disabilities. So that's probably something that a significant number of you have experienced, are currently walking through, and we have a heart for that here at HEAV. In fact, we conducted a focus group and discovered that 60% of homeschool parents have a child with a learning disability. Is that you? Raise your hand, comment, let us know, chat with us in the comments, and let us know what your homeschooling journey is like that if you have a child with a learning disability. And in recent polls, addressing special needs or learning challenges is among the top reasons people homeschool. So if that was a reason that drove you to homeschooling, if you have a child like that, then that's probably going to be a really, really important part of your convention experience, tapping in. So there are a lot of our homeschooling community who are interacting with people with learning disabilities, and we want to resource parents to do that well, to steward this time with your child really, really well. So that's why we are offering a special needs track on Thursday of the convention. To learn more, you can go to heav.org/convention/special needs track, and that link will pop up in the bottom of this video for you to take a look. And I'm already seeing you guys comment. Somebody had a specific syndrome that their child was diagnosed with. You guys are going to get some really good information tonight. We love sharing this kind of information with you. There's another Regina. Thanks for sharing that. We have a heart for that. Somebody has one with autism and one with epilepsy, APD, and dyslexia. Kim, we're really excited to share tonight's content with you. Thanks for commenting and interacting. So our first guest for this evening is Kathy Kuhl. You may have heard about her before. She's been around, and I was talking with her tonight again, and she shared about her HEAV convention experience. And she just started smiling and glowing as we started to talk, and then because she was talking about how encouraging it was. So Kathy coaches parents teaching children with learning challenges. She provides resources, support, and so much more. She homeschooled her own son, who was a creative, distractible, dyslexic student. She has interviewed 64 homeschooling parents with learning. They had students who had learning disabilities, and out of that interview process, she wrote her first book, Homeschooling Your Struggling Learner, and it's a handbook equipping parents to teach children with learning disabilities, which I think is a phenomenal resource for the homeschool community, Kathy. She also wrote Staying Sane as You Homeschool and Encouraging Your Child, and she will be leading the charge of our keynote for the Special Needs Conference. It'll be Survive and Thrive in Your Homeschooling, and she has a couple of other wonderful workshops that she'll be sharing with us. So Kathy, I'm so excited to welcome you this evening.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here, Hannah. I'm really excited about the convention, and not just because I was supposed to come back and speak at the 2020 convention. I've been waiting 2 years. I've been coming and had the privilege of speaking several years. But it's always just a treat. And I would say to folks listening tonight, if you've got a friend whose child has learning disabilities or special needs, or just maybe they don't fit either of those categories, but they've been struggling, maybe somewhat an out-of-the-box learner, then tell them about this. You don't have to have the special needs label on your t-shirt to come. And I just personally find it so encouraging to talk with other parents who get it. People who know how excited I was when my son was 12 and finally got his division facts mostly down. Don't ask. But anyway, you guys know how it is. And I see Stephanie on there. Hey, Steph. This is another friend from Northern Virginia who's been a help to me and others
awesome.
Helping folks with different kinds of learning challenges.
That's fantastic. Well, Kathy is tonight, we'll be asking her some questions, and Kathy, you and I are going to have a good conversation. I'm excited for that. But again, for those of you watching, we have giveaways, and one of those giveaways is Kathy's book, Homeschooling Your Struggling Learner. So you'll get to listen to a preview of that. But if that is something that you would be interested in winning tonight, make sure that you comment, share this video, tag a friend. I love Stephanie's comment. Kathy really helped me with my struggling son, and then later my special needs daughter. That's really encouraging, Stephanie. Thanks for sharing. Well, Kathy, I would just love to jump right in because we have some really cool questions, and I'm excited to hear your insight. So the first question I'd love for you to address, and I think it speaks to the heart of parents who have been really working through a special needs or learning disability dynamic with their child. What do you do when the child isn't really struggling anymore, but they've just given up? They don't want to do the work. They are discouraged. How do you handle that situation?
That first came up to me when I just published my book, and someone came up to me at a convention and looked and said, well, my son's not struggling anymore. He doesn't even try. And first, I just have to say, my heart aches for you, Mom and Dad, and for this child. We all know what it feels like. At least maybe you know what it feels like to just feel like not even trying anymore. I've been there. And it actually made me a better teacher to have had that experience of wanting to throw in the towel. I think the first thing you have to do is make sure they're getting time to breathe, that that they're getting time outdoors, some kind of exercise. If they're not capable of a lot of physical exercise and exertion, just being outside can be good for you. Are they getting some healthy outdoor downtime? Um, and the second thing is Robert Brooks, who wrote the book The Self-Esteem Teacher, says that every child, whatever their struggles, has some area they're good at, and he calls it their island of competence. So in a sea of failure, there's that one little rock we can cling to. And so our kids all have it. Now, when my son was 9 and 10 and I had just started homeschooling, if he'd asked me what he was good at, I'd have said, Legos and talking to strangers, but whatever it is, and it may not seem like a big deal at the time. It may be they make really cool models out of toothpicks and gumdrops or whatever. There's something they do, and you want to encourage that and build on that and cheer them on that way. There's many other things you can do, but that's where I'd start.
That is a great starting point. I feel like that's a very practical step, and it feels, I'm not a homeschooling mom at this point, but I do feel like that is a good starting point. Moving more towards the realm of discerning whether a child is attention deficit or is being distractible. What is the difference? Is there a difference? Can you speak to that, the difference between attention deficit and being distractible?
Well, attention deficit disorder is a condition that can be diagnosed by a doctor. There isn't a blood test. They can't stick litmus paper in your mouth and find out if you have it, but there are a series of, they're called scales, where questions are answered by several different observers. Attention deficit disorder has to occur for more than 6 months in more than one setting. So if you only have ADHD when you're doing your taxes, that's not ADHD. That's just, you don't want to do your taxes. But I think for more on that, that might be a better question for Dr. Amy Moore, your next speaker, because
yes,
I think I defer to her for details on that. But all of us have kids that have experienced working with kids who are distractible. You know, if you've had a 2-year-old, you know the definition of distractible. And some of what I try to share in my workshops is helpful whether or not your child has the diagnosis.
That's encouraging to know that it can be sort of cross applied, that it has a universal application. And I'm really excited for you to be able to share that with parents who come to that special needs track and really dive into the content, because you have some excellent content. Helping distractible students succeed is one title of one of your workshops. So that's really exciting. And then actually another title of your workshop is College Bound but Struggling, Tools for Success. And so that title implies that college is still possible for a student with special needs. I would imagine, however, there are parents that are asking, but how do we do that? What does that look like? So what would you share to that issue?
Well, first, I need to preface it by saying, I think our society today assumes that everybody needs to go to college and that that's the best thing for everybody. And it's not always. I think you need to look at people's talents, not just the weaknesses, but the whole picture. And there's so many kids in so much debt because of college. I wouldn't jump to the conclusion it's for everyone. But sometimes we have struggling learners who want to go to college and they've got aptitudes in some areas. I've blogged about different ways we can help them learn to get accommodations. I'll be talking in that talk and in the Screens in Technology talk about some tech tools that can help our kids. My son, for instance, went to community college and qualified on the basis of his ADHD diagnosis for extended time at tests, or a recorder. That means somebody else was taking notes and he got a copy of the notes. And there's other accommodations. He was able to take his exams at a testing center at a time of his convenience rather than 4 to 6 p.m., which is the worst hour of the day for him to take a test, and that's when one of his classes was. So there's many other accommodations that colleges can apply. And you want to train your child when they're in high school to start thinking about those and to help them get over the fact that it's okay. Nobody says, "Oh, Kathy, you're such a wimp wearing these glasses. You ought to be like everybody else and not wear them. I need these to see who I'm talking to and to read these papers." So that's a reasonable accommodation. And for some of our kids, taking a test in a less stressful environment and these other helps just give them a fair chance.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know working at Liberty University, I've been aware of a lot of the accommodations that they have present there for students with special needs, and I've worked in some student dynamics that have required me to be aware of those. And so it's encouraging to hear you simply affirm that those options are out there, and I'm sure that gives a lot of homeschool parents a lot of hope. So, well, thank you for your insights on that, Kathy, for sure. We're now going to bring in our second guest, Dr. Amy Moore. She is from our sponsor, LearningRx. She's the director of research for LearningRx in Colorado Springs. That's the headquarters of the largest network of cognitive training centers in the world. So I'm excited to hear her insight tonight. Her groundbreaking research has been on brain training for ADHD, learning disabilities, traumatic brain injury. She is a former child development specialist. She's a teacher, education administrator. She has a PhD in psychology. And so she's also a board certified counselor, a licensed pastor, a TEDx speaker. She has just a wealth of information that she brings to us tonight to come alongside some of the wonderful things that Kathy has already been sharing. So, Amy, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're very excited to have both of you guys share your insights. So I would love you to share a little bit about yourself. There is a video circulating around that says that you have a son with ADHD and that you have ADHD as well. So is that true? Share us with a little bit of your story. We'd love to hear.
Well, if it's circulating on the internet, it must be true, right?
Of course.
I actually have two sons with ADHD. And yes, I do have it as well. In fact, after my third freshman year of college, my mom said, "I think you need to go get checked out." And so I was diagnosed as an adult at age 21. But having that, armed with that knowledge and understanding, made it a lot easier, of course, to recognize it when it emerged in two of my own children. And yes, it's absolutely true.
She's like, it is factual, can confirm. And I love hearing how your struggles and growing and learning about yourself prepared you to better serve and parent your kids. And that's so encouraging how the Lord often prepares those contexts for us.
Absolutely. And I think it really created a sense of empathy and understanding, not only as a parent, but also as an educator as well. Mm-hmm. And so I've always been drawn to the children with special needs, drawn to the mm-hmm. children who are struggling. And I think so much because I understand that struggle mm-hmm. personally, as well as seeing it professionally.
Yeah, and it's so great for the kids. It's so great for the kids to see that you have a PhD. You're doing important work that's helping a whole lot of kids. It's not that, okay, she couldn't do what she wanted to do, so she's mm-hmm. settled for something else. You're making a big impact.
Thank you. Yes, and I'm very honest about my testimony. I'm very happy to share that I had 3 freshman years of college before I finally got it right. I'm actually working on my second doctorate right now, and so you can do it.
Mm-hmm. Which ties in so well with what we were talking about earlier with Kathy about children with learning disabilities or special needs advancing and succeeding in college. I feel like that's a really, really encouraging spot of hope and sunlight for parents who might be kind of going, oh no, what do I do? What are my options? But I'd love to talk too about LearningRx, because we've been blessed here at HEAV to partner with LearningRx for a couple of years now. And so we'd love to hear more about this brain training program that you guys have over there. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So LearningRx is a supplemental education services provider. And so we specialize in cognitive training, which is the remediation and development of cognitive skills. And those are the skills that underlie our ability to think and learn all day, every day, like memory and attention, processing speed, visual and auditory processing, reasoning skills. And so what we have found, we've worked with over 105,000 children and adults now. It's a
Wow.
program that's been around since the 1980s. And we've learned that most children who have learning struggles also have one or more cognitive skills that just aren't strong enough, right? So they might have a weakness in memory or in processing speed or in attention. And so when we can strengthen those skills, then we can see improvements in learning.
That's exciting. And that's something that LearningRx offers that you guys are developing. And it looks like we have a question from somebody in the audience. Jennifer asks, I have heard from multiple sources that girls or women are often diagnosed much later than boys.
Mhm.
What can we do or be on the lookout for in our girls to get them the help they could use sooner?
Yeah. And so the reason that we think that girls are typically diagnosed later is because they don't always have the hyperactivity that we see in boys. And so they may have the inattentive type of ADHD. And those are the kids who fall through the cracks, kids like me, right? I was not diagnosed until college because I was not hyperactive, which is the behaviors that cause issues in the classroom, that cause teachers to say to parents, I think your child has ADHD.
Mhm.
And so when you're not seeing the behavioral manifestations of ADHD, you don't necessarily think about looking at just the neurological manifestations. And so that's just generally why girls or women are diagnosed later. And so to what you would be on the lookout for then are those neurological issues. And so do you see severe inattention? What we know about ADHD is it's not actually a deficit of attention. People with ADHD have plenty of attention. They just attend to the wrong things. So they can't decipher what the most important thing is that they need to be paying attention to at the moment. So if you see impulsivity, if you see extreme inattention or the inability to focus and concentrate and finish a task that they start, we also know that girls demonstrate emotional dysregulation. About 80% of adolescent females with ADHD have extreme inability to regulate their emotions. And so if you see that coupled with inattention, impulsivity, and lack of focus and concentration on the appropriate tasks, then you might want to say, maybe there's something here. But I think it's important also to recognize that just because you see inattention doesn't mean it's pathological. It doesn't mean that it's worthy of an ADHD diagnosis. And so you want to look at sleep. You want to look at diet. You want to look at overall physical health, mental health. Is your child taking medications for something that can cause inattention issues or what appear to be inattention issues? And then other learning disabilities can pretend to be ADHD. So if your child actually has dyslexia, you know, that frustration and slow reading process can look like inattention and concentration issues simply because it's creating frustration. Auditory processing disorders can mimic ADHD because if you're not processing instructions or what you're hearing, it might look like you're not paying attention. So, you know, sluggish cognitive tempo or slow processing speed, kids that are slow to process information that's coming in, that can look like they're not paying attention. So there are lots of things that can pretend to be ADHD when they might be something else. And the way that you find out is cognitive skills testing, so that you can drill down on, well, what are the deficits that I'm actually seeing?
And those
That
are
was
great.
a long answer to a short
No,
question.
those were great insights. I really think that answered the question well, and I think it gave kind of a scope and a range for assessing, especially in girls. And I think you sort of addressed the next question that I had, because I was going to ask you, most parents do have trouble getting their kids' attention at times. Like you mentioned, it's not uncommon for you to have a child that you just focus, listen to me. And so my question was going to be, at what point should a parent consider getting help for an inattentive child, and how do they go about that? So I think if you wanted to add anything more to when should you consider getting help, and then also expound on how do you go about seeking help as a parent of a child who has needs.
So Kathy hit on it a little bit too in her response, that if you're seeing problems that are present in more than one environment. So is the problem just when you're saying to your child, you need to go brush your teeth and get ready for bed, but you're not seeing problems anywhere else? They're getting great grades academically, socially they're doing okay, they're participating in the rest of the areas of life that, they've chosen to participate in, then that's an issue of motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't want to go brush my teeth and get ready for bed right now. So I'm going to selectively pay attention to that command, right? And so that's the biggest way to know if you're seeing it in more than one area of your child's life.
Awesome. And so what's a good path to take to go about finding help for those kids?
Sure. So there are several options. So you can start with your child's pediatrician. You can seek out neuropsych testing, through a neuropsychologist or clinical psychologist or child psychologist. You can ask, well, this is homeschooled, so you wouldn't go to the school district, although some school districts do support homeschoolers too, depending on where you live in terms of testing and child find. So that resource might be available to you. LearningRx does offer cognitive testing, and so we don't diagnose in our centers at all, and that's okay. You don't need a diagnosis to participate in cognitive training, because it doesn't matter what your diagnosis is, right? If you have cognitive skills that need to be strengthened, we'll determine what those cognitive skills are through testing. And so you can go to learningrx.com or call 1-866-BRAIN-01 if that's something that you'd be interested in pursuing as well.
Great. And finally, to wrap up with that thread of questioning, Stephanie has a question. Can you cognitively test nonverbal children?
So at LearningRx, we cannot, because the tests that we use do require verbal responses. But there are nonverbal cognitive tests that can be administered by a clinical psychologist or neuropsychologist. Yes.
Awesome. Great question, Stephanie. Great answer, Amy. And now what I'd love is a little bit of a discussion between the two of you, Kathy and Amy, on the question that we hit on earlier, the difference between an attention deficit child and a child who is simply distracted. I think we've hit on that a couple of times, but any other wisdom or insight that you both have or maybe would like to discuss, I know would be very, very valuable.
So I think that emotional component is a big one. Like I said, when we see that inability to regulate emotions in more than 80% of kids with ADHD, then that coupled with distractibility might be a red flag. And I'm not talking about the occasional, I didn't get what I want, so I'm going to be mad about it. I'm talking about the explosive emotions and that inability and the inappropriate response, right? And instead of showing typical disappointment, it's an enormous big emotion. And I'm going to actually talk about big emotions in my ADHD workshop on Thursday of the convention too. I'm going to show some differences in the brain that help explain that emotional dysregulation. And the idea is so that we have empathy, right? Because if we understand what's happening in the brain, then we have a little bit more patience. We can take a deep breath and go, it's not their fault. Their brains are just different. But every child is distractible. So we look at motivation. You've heard the phrase, if you feed them, they will come. Well, I've taught hundreds of teachers over my career, and I've always said, if you are interesting enough, they will pay attention. And so look at your instructional strategies, look at whether you're teaching that includes the interests of your kids in your curriculum and in your lessons? Are they motivated to engage? Are your lessons and activities, are they emergent and based on your child's interests? Because motivation is such a big part of avoiding distractibility.
That's awesome. Well, Kathy, you've been smiling and nodding the whole time because it sounds like that's resonating with some of what you've experienced. Any additional thoughts to add to that?
Yes, for distractible kids, whether they have ADHD or not, hands-on activities are so helpful. I taught public school before I had kids, and then I thought I was through with my educating. So that was a surprise. Ended up homeschooling my son from 4th through 12th grades. But one of the many things we can enjoy as homeschooling parents is the freedom to flex to include hands-on activities. We can include movement in lessons. We can vary where our kids are doing their learning. My son did 4th grade math under the dining room table because he thought that was funny. And we had lots of field trips. And there's just lots of things you can do to make things more engaging that don't require a ton of work for mom. I'm not talking about the kind of craft where mom does 15 minutes of prep for a 3-minute project, but getting out in the community. My son worked as an apprentice reenactor, an outgrowth of his interest in history. And I'll also just mention another possible cause of kids being distracted is, as Amy alluded, they can be bored because they're gifted. One of my relatives, my sister-in-law, was someone who encouraged me to homeschool, and part of why she started homeschooling was because she had been a teacher's aide, and she saw the kids taking 15 minutes to get a drink of water because they all had to line up and take their turns, and some of them went again. And she thought, my kids don't need that. So when we've got the kind of ratio that we have as students, even if you have 12 kids, you've got a better ratio than I ever had in a public school classroom. So we can do a lot to eliminate boredom. We can also change environmental factors. I mean, first year homeschooling, we had the window in front of us where I could just see trees, but my son saw squirrel and hawk. So we moved to another room that had sheer curtains, and then he could focus. So all sorts of things like that are so much easier to do at home than in a classroom.
Absolutely. And I think too, to build on that, you have the freedom as a home educator to adapt how your child meets a criteria, right? And so when you can get buy-in from your child on, how do you think that you can meet this outcome? Like, this is the requirement, so we have to find a way to get from point A to point B. But if your child can help determine how they want to get there, then that increases motivation and reduces them losing focus too. And there's a sense of accountability because you're able to go back then and say, hey, this was your plan.
Those are awesome insights. And I'm very excited to hear, especially, Kathy, I know you have a number of sessions coming up. And so I'm very excited to continue to hear more about this topic. And I think that it's been very encouraging for our listeners and people who have joined us for this Facebook party tonight. I think just to hear, number one, that there's hope. And then also to hear that there are strategies, there are tactics, there are resources out there. And I think to a lot of people tonight, both of you are sort of the face of hope, if you will, just extending those resources and those options, and that I've been down this road and I can offer you encouragement and motivation to keep going. So Amy and Kathy, thank you both so much for joining us this evening. We have loved your insight, and we just had one more question pop up. Let's address that really quick. Regina just addressed the topic of hope. She said, I'm desperate for hope tonight. Big emotions from our daughter. She's definitely emotional. She's got some dysregulation centering around her SBI. And I think Regina identified that earlier in the comments. Therapists don't believe she has ADHD, just trauma-induced SBI. Is this specifically for children with ADHD?
No, we're addressing all kinds of special needs. And in fact, Amy and I are just two of the speakers. We have a vision therapist, Dr. Westcott, coming. We've got Julie Knoll, who's adopted 3 children from orphanages in Ukraine and been
Wow.
with different disabilities of different sorts. We're going to be covering a wide range of topics, and there's other speakers too on the track and through the conference. So no, it's not an ADHD event. We just started talking about that, but there's many other things. Dyslexia is a big concern for a lot of us. We've had several people say that they've got kids with hearing impairment. So we're trying to be as broad special needs as we can.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Another question from Kelly Ann Smith. She wants to know, are there any strategies for teaching kids with trauma, which may be masked by quote unquote autistic behaviors or non-compliance? Amy, can you speak to that?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So what's being masked?
Yeah, Kelly, if you could provide us some further clarification about that. It's again, strategies for teaching kids with trauma, which may be masked by those behaviors. Kelly, if you can provide us some further clarification, I know we'd love to speak to that for you. But before I dismiss, because I'd love to get to that question as well, if anybody else has any other questions, we'd love to address those briefly. And if not, we do have the track. Yes, Kathy.
I just wanted to mention, since you asked your starting question, what was difficult, and I saw math pop up at least 4 times. My last workshop on Saturday is when math doesn't come easily. There's been interesting research done applying the Orton-Gillingham techniques that help dyslexics learn to read to the teaching of mathematics. So there's some really exciting work going on in that area. I've got some on my website, but I'll be sharing a lot Saturday, and I get to give 6 workshops this weekend, but I want to cut one of mine and go to Amy's because it sounds really good.
Yay!
Awesome. I'd love to have you there. Yes, I'm going to do 2 workshops. I'm doing the Hacking the ADHD Brain on Thursday, and then I'm doing Prescription for Learning on Friday, which is all about the promise of brain training for all learning struggles. And so we're going to do some fun brain training demos. I'm going to show how our cognitive skills work together and how that can impact learning. And then I'm also doing brain training demos at the LearningRx booth in the exhibit hall too on Thursday and Friday. So you can come see me there. If you're in Kathy's workshops and can't get to mine, you can come to the booth and get more.
You have another opportunity.
Yeah.
This is what I love about convention. If you can't catch it in a workshop, you usually can catch it in the exhibit hall or find another way to connect with the content. Convention is just incredible, and I am only a little bit biased. Well, Amy and Kathy, thank you so much again for joining us this evening. You have provided wonderful insight. You've been so marked by hope and positivity, and I think that's really going to encourage a lot of parents. As a side note, for those of you that are watching, Kathy and Amy will both be a part of our special needs conference happening on Thursday of the convention. And you can learn more about that information at heav.org/convention/special needs track. You should see some information at the bottom of the screen to direct you to where you need to go if you want more information about this special needs conference, which we are just, like I said, so very excited to offer. We really think to offer a lot of hope and a lot of really practical, helpful tips and tricks. And hope. I feel like I keep saying that a lot, but I think you guys are resonating with that. So that's awesome.
I think that's a good message.
Yeah. I think it's definitely resonating with those people that are watching who have been in the trenches of homeschooling children with special needs or learning disability. So as a final note to those of you who are watching, just remember that pre-registration for convention does end May 20th. It's just around the corner. Don't miss out. The price will increase for at-the-door registration. So go ahead, save some money, get registered now. As well, if you entered for a giveaway this evening, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this video. Thank you for commenting and interacting in the comments one of the reasons we love doing these, because we get to interact with you. If you did participate and have hopes of winning a giveaway, we will be picking our giveaway winners tomorrow, so stay tuned. Thank you again so much for joining us this evening. We look forward to seeing you again very, very soon for our next convention Facebook party. Have a wonderful evening.